Well, it is 8:30 in the morning, so I want to thank everybody that has joined this important discussion about food security in our community. Welcome to another MAP presentation. As we all know, the world has changed a lot since our last event, and the need for timely, accurate information has never been more apparent than now. And as we all know, food security is a big issue not around the nation and our community. 1 in 8 people across the nation are on food stamps. And we certainly have that in our community, which we're going to learn more about today. I want to thank our presenters for all being here today and sharing their wisdom with us, and thank the MAP dashboard team. Before I begin, just a little housekeeping. One, you are on mute. So if you do have a question, and George will talk about it, put it in the chat box. We'll answer that later. Other is just to let you know that this meeting is being recorded. And with that, we'll pass it to our fearless leader at the Economic and Business Research Center, George Hammond. George.
Well, thanks, Clint. It's wonderful to see you here today, and thank you so much to all of our attendees for coming and our panelists for being part of this this really important event. So my name is George Hammond. I'm director of the Economic and Business Research Center here in the Eller College. And if Jennifer could advance the slides one for me. My role today is really limited. I'm going to introduce today's presenters, give you an overview of how the webinar is going to work. And then kind of my job is to watch the chat box for your questions, and I'll pass those questions on to the panelists at the end. So we're going to save all the questions for the end, but feel free during each of the presentations to type your questions in, and we'll get those answered for you. So we are really happy today to have 3 excellent presenters, and these presenters are well known across the state of Arizona, and particularly here in southern Arizona. So I'm not going to do a detailed description of the lengthy list of accomplishments for each of our presenters. Just a brief, quick intro here at the beginning. Our first presenter is going to be Jennifer Pullen. She's a senior research economist and the MAP dashboard coordinator here at the Economic and Business Research Center in the University of Arizona. Our second presenter is Michael McDonald. He's the CEO of the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. And last but not least, we'll have Jaime Chamberlain, the president and owner of Chamberlain Distributing. So thanks so much to each of our presenters for coming today. We do really appreciate it. So the webinar details, as Clint mentioned, the webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available on the MAP dashboard website later today. We will be conducting this in conference mode. That means that all of the attendees are going to be muted. Only us presenters are going to be unmuting ourselves to do our presentations and to answer your questions. Now, no doubt you're going to have a lot of questions as we go through this topic. And if you want to put a question to one or more of the panelists, please use the chat box, the Zoom chat box that you'll see generally at the bottom of your screen. And I'll relay those questions to the presenters at the end of our time together. You can also email me questions anytime at ghammond@email.arizona.edu or ghammond@eller.arizona.edu. So with that, my job here at the beginning is done. I always like these easy days. I'm going to turn it over now to Jennifer Pullen, and she will take you through her presentation. So Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you, George. I'd like to start today by thanking our MAP dashboard sponsors who make the MAP project and events like today possible. Our sustaining sponsors include Tucson Electric Power, the Thomas R. Brown Foundation, the Freeport-McMoran Foundation, and our partners include the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, Pima Association of Governments, Southern Arizona Leadership Council, Sunshine, and the University of Arizona. If you're interested in learning more about our sponsors or our partners, you can visit the Map Dashboard website. Down towards the bottom of the page in the footer, there's a link to both our sponsors and our partners. I'd also like to thank our media sponsor, the Arizona Daily Star. You can find Map Dashboard features on the front page of the business section the last Sunday of each month, and on the front page of the health section the first Monday of each month. So look for this coming Sunday's business section feature. It will highlight how employment has changed in Arizona, Tucson, and Phoenix from February through June. And then before we get started with today's articles, I just wanted to mention that we provide a wide variety of information on the MAP dashboard. We have 36 core socioeconomic indicators, everything from economic indicators like employment growth to more socioeconomic indicators like teen birth rate, educational attainment. And in addition to those 36 core indicators that we maintain and update on an annual basis, we write future articles on topics relevant to Southern Arizona. So we publish at least 2 articles each month. Here's an example of some of the more recent articles that we've had on the MAP dashboard. We've looked at housing affordability in Tucson and how that varies by income, how renters fare, how our local organizations use the map. And then more recently, we've been writing a lot of articles on kind of the COVID-19 impact on Tucson and the state. So you can check all of these out on the MAP dashboard if you visit the website and click on the library link that's in the upper right-hand corner right under the search bar, and go to the library and you can search by category different types of feature articles that we have available. So today I'm going to highlight 2 recent food security articles that we published on the map. This is going to kind of be a general discussion of what food security in Tucson looks like, and I'm sure Michael and Hannah are going to talk a lot more, give you a lot more specifics about Southern Arizona. So I'm going to kind of do that kind of high level information, like how food insecure is Tucson's population, how does Tucson compare to the pure metropolitan areas, what percentage of our population has limited access to food, what does food insecurity look like for Tucson's children? How many children are enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program? And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the food-related MAP white papers that we've published on the MAP dashboard. These are MAP white papers or reports that are written by University of Arizona faculty on areas of their expertise, and some of them are relevant to the topic today. And then we'll end with a brief discussion on what do we think COVID-19's impact is going to be on food security. So let's get started with the first article that we published last week, and that's how food insecure is Tucson's population. So Feeding America defines food insecurity as a household's inability to provide enough food for every person to live an active and healthy life. Food security is one way we can assess the role of hunger in our region, and research has also shown that food insecurity can have serious health complications for individuals. So it's a very important topic to talk about and to understand and to track over time so we can see if it's increasing or declining. So we see here, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, that food insecurity had been declining in the United States since the Great Recession. This gray bar here represents the actual recession period. You can see there was a pretty steep increase from 11.1% of households being food insecure to 14.6%. That persisted for several years after the Great Recession as unemployment levels stayed high. And then it started to decline here around kind of 2013, 2014, and was down at 11.1% in 2018. So we know historically that food insecurity increases during economic downturns, during times of increased unemployment. So that kind of, we can anticipate that when we get the data for 2020, we will see increases in food insecurity because of the COVID-19 induced recession, and that may persist for several years after 2020 or after employment levels have returned to more normal. So in 2017, 13.6% of Tucson's population was considered food insecure. This is relatively high when we compare to pure metropolitan areas. These are the pure metropolitan areas that we compare Tucson to on the MAP dashboard. They're similar to Tucson in some regard. They have a similar population or demographic mix, a large research university, military installation. They also happen to be the regions in the Western US that we compete for jobs for in Tucson. So here you can see Albuquerque had the highest, and that percentage was 14.7% in 2017. And this data comes from Map the Meal Gap. It's courtesy of the County Health Rankings. We also, in this particular article, explored data at the county level so we could compare how Southern Arizona compared relative to other regions in the state. You can see here Pima at 13.6%. Pima is the same geographic region as the Tucson metropolitan area. Metropolitan areas are defined at the county level. So Pima County and Tucson metropolitan area are the same. You can see here Santa Cruz had the lowest percentage of any of the counties in the state of Arizona. That was 9.6%. And Apache County up here had 24.2%, so almost a quarter of their population was food insecure in 2017. So the darker the color, the higher the percent of individuals that are food insecure. So one additional measure we explored in this particular article is the percent of the population with limited access to food. This measure looks at the percentage of the population who are considered low income and do not live close to a grocery store. So for the purpose of this data, low income is defined as less than or greater, equal to or less than 200% of the federal poverty level. And proximity to a grocery store for rural areas is defined as less than 10 miles. And for non-rural areas, that is less than 1 mile. So Tucson fell in the middle of its peer metropolitan areas here at 7.7%. So 7.7% of the population have limited access to food. San Antonio had the highest percentage here when we're comparing to our peer metros at 10%. And Portland and San Diego had the lowest at 3.1%. I want to mention here, and I put all of these geographies down here because the map, all of the graphs on the map dashboard website are interactive. And so we have data available for all 10 Western states, the 12 metropolitan areas, and all 15 Arizona counties. So if you go to the website and you visit this article, you can go in and you can click on and off each of these different geographies. And if you're interested in the state data, how the states compare to the metros or how the counties compare, just click on and off and this graph will repopulate with that information. Also, you can hover over the bar and get that tooltip for each of these different bars on the website like you have for Tucson. And then also something that's relatively new on the map dashboard is this hamburger menu. You can go and you can select the geographies that you're interested in, click on this hamburger menu, and you can save the graph as an image. And we encourage you to do that, to use our graphs, all of our graphs on the map dashboard in your reports, in your presentations. Just give credit to the map dashboard where you got that image from. Also, you can download the data. So if you need the data for some, you want to look at the actual data points in a table and in an Excel file, you can go into this hamburger menu and download all of those data and all of the data. And what you download is what your selection is. So if you're just interested in the states, you click off everything else, click on the states, and then go in and download. So a little bit of new functionality that we've added to the website that I encourage you to check out. And that's available for probably about 90% of our graphs at this point on the website. So we recently published, just yesterday, another article on food security that looked at how food insecure, how food secure Tucson's children are. The Census Bureau recently released an article that suggested that food insufficiency due to the coronavirus pandemic is especially prevalent among households with children, and that we know from the data collected by the Census Bureau that in June, 3.9 million children experienced COVID-19 related food shortages. So here we look at the percentage, started with the US, and we look at the percentage of households with children that are food insecure. And in 2018, that was just under 14%. And of the households with children, 7% of them have children that are food insecure. So 7% of our households with children are food insecure in the United States, or were in 2018. Several federal nutrition programs exist to help support public support to families in need. These include SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. A while back, we wrote an article that looked at SNAP benefits at the city and town level. You can visit the map dashboard, again, that library link, and if you click on our Southern Arizona communities Over on the left-hand menu, Southern Arizona Communities, you'll find this article that explores SNAP benefits at the city and town level. So we have, I think, 48 different cities available in Southern Arizona data for 48 different cities. So City of Tucson, Sarita, Douglas, Bisbee are all included in there, South Tucson. Other federal programs include the summer breakfast program, the school breakfast program, summer food service program, and the national school lunch program. So we're going to look at the national school lunch data in a little bit of detail. So I wanted to provide a little background before we do about who actually qualifies for a national school lunch program. So to qualify for a free lunch, the household income has to be less than 130% of the federal poverty level. And to qualify for a reduced lunch, the income has to be 185% of the federal poverty level. And for reference, in 2020, this year, the federal poverty level for a family of 3 is $21,720. So here we can see that 55.5% of Tucson's school-age children were enrolled in a free or reduced lunch program. That kind of, again, falls in the middle of pure metropolitan areas, with El Paso having the highest up here at about 75%. Colorado Springs the lowest at about 38%. So more than half of our school-age children are enrolled in a free or reduced lunch program in the Tucson metropolitan area. And then here is a similar graph to what we looked at earlier for the US that showed that decline after decline in food insecurity after the Great Recession. This is a different set of data. This comes from Kids Count, and it looks at children that were living in a household that was food insecure at some point during the year. So you can see again right here, this is when the Great Recession started, 2008. You see that pretty significant increase, especially in Arizona, for food insecurity. And then again, that extending beyond the end of the actual recession, and then starting to taper off here in 2012 for Arizona and 2013 for the US. And falling to about 17% or actually 17% in 2018. So again, this illustrates to us that we can anticipate that we will probably see a fairly significant increase in food insecurity because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so briefly, I'm just gonna mention a few of the MAP white papers that we've published on the website here. And again, these are reports that are written by University of Arizona faculty on areas of their expertise. The first one, the Farm to School programs in Southern Arizona, analyzes farm to school programs and includes their characteristics and activities. The second one, food accessibility in Southern Arizona. This explores the location of farmers markets relative to households with children, the poverty rate, vehicle-less households, and ethnicity. This maps the growth and trajectory of farmers markets over time, so you can look and explore how the locations of farmer markets have changed throughout time in the Tucson area. And then the last article, and the one that's most relevant to what we're talking about today, is comprehensive food access analysis in Tucson, and this addresses aspects of food store diversity and variety in an evaluation of food access, especially in low-income neighborhoods. So they explored basically food deserts, and they looked at what regions in the Tucson metropolitan area have food deserts. And instead of including a lot of the data to date has looked at just chain stores, they included mom and pop stores in their analysis as well, and looked at how that changed the distribution of food deserts around the Tucson area. And here I just took a snip of one of the interactive graphs that we have available on the MAP website. And you can see here, you can click on all stores. So this includes mom and pop grocery stores that provide healthy food, as well as chain stores. You could click off all stores, click on chain only. This would regenerate with how the food desert distribution changes in the region. And here's their definition of what a food desert is: an area with low income and low access to food, and inclusion of independent stores increases access for many neighborhoods. So encourage you to check that out. Again, you can find this in the library if you go to the library link and you go over to the menu on the left-hand side and click on MAP white papers. You will find this either on the first or second page list of white papers. So one thing we know is there's a lot of uncertainty around COVID-19 and what its impact's going to be economically, on food security, how much worse the COVID-19 pandemic is going to get this fall, especially when it starts to overlap with the flu season. But there are a few things we do know, and the first is that food insecurity typically increases during economic downturns. So I think we can kind of brace for knowing that we're going to see increases in food insecurity, and I'm sure Michael and Jaime are going to talk about that in some more detail. The World Bank here is estimating that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're going to see an additional 135 million people worldwide that will face food insecurity. And Feeding America is estimating an increase of 17.1 million individuals in the US will become food insecure because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then what we do know, we've started to get a little bit of data. The Census Bureau has this household pulse survey, and they released data for June that showed that 3.9 million children experienced COVID-19 related food shortages in June. And so we'll be able to track this data over the next few months and see what's happening with food insecurity or food related shortages from the census. And a couple of our key takeaways from today. Tucson has a high percentage of food insecure individuals, especially relative to pure Western metros. It's ranked, they have the 4th highest percent. We expect that to increase again because of the COVID-19 induced recession. Arizona was slightly higher than Tucson and was 3rd among Western states. Arizona again, similar, had the 3rd highest rate of limited access to food among Western states. Tucson's rate was lower at 7.7%. That placed it kind of in the middle of its pure metros. And then we know that 14% in 2018, about 14% of households with children were food insecure, which 7% had food insecure children. Food insecurity declined after the Great Recession, but we know it does increase during downturns. And then the data from the Census Bureau has shown that households with children have been hit the hardest by the financial implications of COVID-19. And so really, to know the true impact on food security worldwide and in the United States, we need more time and data to estimate that impact. And so I encourage you to engage with us. If you have not already, sign up for our monthly newsletter. We send out a monthly newsletter that includes updates on new feature articles that we have, on upcoming events like today. If you go to the website, scroll down to the bottom, you'll find this subscribe for updates box. Just fill out your name and information, and we'll add you to that mailing list. And then if you're ever on the website and you have questions about the data, you can use this Ask a Researcher form box. Click on that and submit your question, and one of the researchers within the Economic and Business Research Center will try to help you with your question. With that, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Michael McDonald, or I'll actually turn it back to George now. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Jennifer. That was great. And as Jennifer said, next up is Michael McDonald. So Michael, please unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Jennifer, for really setting the stage, the framework for today's conversation. And I'm very cognizant as I look at all the folks in this room today. I think we've got 126 people. I've got a lot of good colleagues, current colleagues on this call today, former colleagues, partners in the fight to end hunger, and folks who do all kinds of social service work throughout Southern Arizona. We've got funders, we've got elected officials, we've got folks in the environmental sustainability and cultural sustainability movements. So thank you everyone for what you are doing to keep Southern Arizona resilient and strengthen the work that the opportunities we're trying to provide for everyone. I would say a couple things. I was pleased that the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona was recognized in 2018 as the Food Bank of the Year for the Feeding America Network. Having said that, once you're on the pedestal, there's no place but down. So I want to acknowledge that we humbly do this work even with that recognition. Also want to be critical of the data that Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap provides, and Jennifer referred to quite a bit. It's probably fairly valid at the county level. It is not valid at the census block tract level. And so it doesn't matter, it's not granular for people's lived experience in their neighborhoods. So when we do a deeper dive of the 200,000 households that connect to the Community Food Bank and our 400 partner network across Southern Arizona, 5 counties. That includes many partners on today's call. 200,000 people pre-pandemic were accessing hunger relief, food security services somewhere in this great safety net network and ecosystem. They experience hunger quite differently from one part of a neighborhood to another part of the neighborhood. So in urban Tucson, in the center of town, we have enclaves of poverty and enclaves of privilege and wealth. And they live in the same, basically the same neighborhood. And unbeknownst to people behind closed doors, poverty continues to ravage households and opportunity. And there is the direct link between food insecurity and economic insecurity. So that has been exacerbated by the pandemic, of course. So I want to say that in addition to the quantitative data at very high levels, we need better quantitative data at very localized levels. And then of course, people's lived experiences matter tremendously, and how they name their lived experiences. So yes, the USDA has described in their definitions for decades what a food desert is. People are not acknowledging that people, especially in low-income neighborhoods, often communities of color, households of color, experience food swamps. And a swamp is, I can get calories, they're just all carbohydrate calories at the convenience store. That's the only form of food assistance in my neighborhood. So as we do this work, we want to be mindful of people's lived experiences quantitatively, qualitatively, and the way in which people describe their own struggles with food insecurity. I'm going to just touch upon the need pre-pandemic. It's 16% of Pima County households struggle ongoing with food insecurity. It can spike up to much higher than that amount, over 20% in a given year. It's all a function of jobs and income. And Southern Arizona, unfortunately, is a fairly low wage area. So pre-pandemic, the demand for food security, hunger relief is great. Through the pandemic, many of our partners, including our own 8 facilities in the 5 counties, have seen a doubling of demand, of community need. And so people have lost jobs, been furloughed, lost income. 4 times the number of people who had never used a food bank or a food pantry or any kind of food assistance have shown up saying, I need support today. And thankfully, we're able to provide it because we've got a great charitable hunger relief network here in Southern Arizona. We've got great partners. Folks like the National Guard have been deployed to help. We need that extended. I saw that coming in the comments. Only the feds can extend that. So everyone is coming together to do this great hunger relief effort. It's daunting, and it's probably not sustainable in terms of, is this the way that we want to live in America and in Southern Arizona? So I want to pivot and talk about some of the solutions, both direct service solutions as well as other solutions. So direct service solutions, people know the food bank and our partners for the hunger relief food assistance we provide. You need food today, you got it. There's a place somewhere in our 400 partner network, you're gonna get a food resource for your family. And these families are us. They're working class families who are struggling to make ends meet. And the food budget is the most elastic part of a household's budget. So if you're gonna skimp anywhere, you gotta keep the air conditioning, the swamp cooler going in the summer. You gotta pay your rent. Thankfully, there's a stay on paying rent, but that rent is all gonna be due come later this year. You've gotta keep that going. You've gotta pay for childcare, transportation, keep your car, your bus pass going. You're gonna skimp on food. And that's why we see kids not getting the nutrition they need. That's why we see seniors having to make a choice between prescription meds to manage their health and pain versus eating for health. So whether the lens is through healthcare, called the social determinants of health, which include food security and housing and transportation and access to quality childcare and education and good paying jobs and good healthcare, we can look at the lens through a justice lens and an equity lens. And that link between food insecurity or food injustice, economic insecurity or economic injustice, the inequitable distribution of wages and wealth in our country, or we look at racial injustice and the disparities and inequities that households, people of color, and communities of color experience, systemically experience. These are very real lived realities of the folks we serve in Southern Arizona. So the solutions have been start a charity, and we have many of them. Unfortunately, collectively, last year, pre-pandemic, we probably provided 60 million meals worth of food in Southern Arizona, which sounds tremendous. But you divide that by the pre-pandemic household need, which was 200,000 households, that's not a lot of food. That's not a lot of meals that are being covered. That's meals worth of food. With the doubling during the pandemic, we haven't been able to double our food output that we're giving to people. We've increased it dramatically, but we're still falling short. So charitable, hunger relief, safety net, that's all needed. It fills a need. It doesn't serve the need long-term, and it doesn't meet a family's true food security needs. So families are super resourceful, super resilient. Many of our households have umpteen jobs and they have income, just not sufficient income to pay for everything. Gratefully, thankfully, the federal government still supports federal food programs like SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. All the school programs that Jennifer alluded to are terribly important, whether that's free and reduced breakfast and lunch or after school snacks. That feeds many vulnerable families. Over 55% of households in Tucson alone need that support. Seniors receive some federal benefits. Federal benefits are super important, and they provide more benefit nationwide than the entire Feeding America Hunger Relief Food Security Network. And the best charity in the world is still a drop in the bucket. We need significant public policy. So let me talk about public policy as a solution. Yes, continue to ask Congress and the administration to adequately fund safety net programs, food security, economic security, education. These things matter, healthcare, all of that matters. And there are federal nexes to all of these things. But I think sometimes we forget that there are local things that we can do and statewide things that we can do. And so locally, what can we do? If food insecurity is tied to good pay and jobs, we each need to make a commitment as businesses, as organizations, and we need to advocate for improved wages. The Community Food Bank has struggled to improve our wages. We've just implemented a $16 an hour starting wage as a signal to our commitment to sharing and providing equitable wages, fair wages for households who struggle. Many of our own staff members and our volunteers struggle with food insecurity. So that's part of our own personal commitment that only each one of us and our businesses can decide what we can do and when we can do it. But that's a place to start. Sometimes in your own backyard, you can start with yourself. The other thing I would say locally, we could look at things like assets that are not being utilized by the community. Some of our government entities have land that is idle. Its highest and best use is not land development because there are little tiny pockets of land. Many people are gardening and farming. This has been a long indigenous tradition in Southern Arizona. There's so many folks who want to be self-reliant and grow their own food, sell food. City of gastronomy right here in Tucson. People can make a living, and increasingly a better living, especially if owners and employers pay better wages, through food. And everyone wants access to fresh local food. We have land. We have water policy that we could work on with our county and our municipality governments. Let's use that land for community benefit. There are folks who want to grow food. That is a way to improve food security and environmental sustainability, especially since we truck in so much of our produce, so much of our food from many other places. And we need to, because we need to feed Southern Arizona and beyond, as Jaime will talk about. But we can also grow our own local food. And then at the state level, we need to keep asking for support when we get those federal SNAP benefits, when we get the benefits that go into schools to feed kids and seniors. is to ask our state legislature, let's have the least restrictive policies around access to those benefits and the longevity of those benefits, especially during pandemic time. It's going to take a very long time for us to recover economically. And so 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, we are still going to have higher levels of food security need in Southern Arizona than we did 6 months ago. And so we would ask that our state legislator not punish families who are getting back on their feet and still need some food stamps, still need access to some federal subsidies that matter, that make ends meet. So we have to use our voice and speak up. So I want to acknowledge that direct service is terribly important for today, but it does not systemically fix the weakness in our economy. And it's a weakness caused by inequities and disparities that are often tied to racial inequities and racial disparities in our country and in Southern Arizona. I know we don't like to talk about that publicly, but it is true, even in Southern Arizona, with the great philanthropy that we have and people who care, we still struggle. Families intergenerationally, multi-generationally struggle to access to education, access to good jobs, access to good health care, access to food security, access to networks that will support their journey to becoming self-sufficiency. And so that's part of the solution that I'm seeing work right now. And I want to give credit to all the mutual aid groups here in Tucson. These are neighbors helping neighbors, often in communities of color below the radar screen of institutions like the Community Food Bank, especially white-facing, white-presenting institutions who need credibility in all the places where we serve. Sometimes immigrant communities struggle to access benefits from government, whether local, state, or federal, or whether from well-meaning good charities like the Community Food Bank and our partners. And so what I'm seeing right now are mutual aid groups, neighbors helping neighbors, doing it, picking up groceries, cooking food, delivering food, fixing cars, helping with rent. And so increasingly, institutions like mine are saying, let's partner with these folks who are just helping their neighbors and community. That is a commitment to lifting everyone. It's a commitment to equity, a commitment to justice, and it's a commitment to strengthening the social fabric of Southern Arizona. That's something we can do. That's part of being civically engaged in our community. And finally, as we are seeing, we want to lift up the voices, the political voice and power of all the beneficiaries of all nonprofits here in Southern Arizona. And as people engage with their political power, things change. And so I'm going to end on that note in terms of solution is vote, encourage people to pursue elected office, especially if they're representing their community who's been underserved for so long. And this white ally, this middle-aged white ally needs to be able to support the voice, the political power of very diverse communities. I think we have that commitment in Southern Arizona. And I just want to applaud the folks who are living that experience right now in elected offices locally and across our state and country. I'm going to turn it back over to George.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. Thanks so much. That was fantastic. Please stick around. We do have a number of questions for you. So next up is Jaime Chamberlain. Jaime, take it away.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you for all the sponsors who are making this possible. My name is Jaime Chamberlain. I'm from Nogales, Arizona. I am the president and owner of Chamberlain Distributing. My parents started this company, which was in 1971, so almost 50 years old. We are distributors of Mexican fruits and vegetables we distribute our products throughout North America, and we distribute through 3 different types of distribution channels, primarily through retail, food service, and wholesale. And we do this pretty much on a 10 to 11 month basis. We typically start our season in September, and we finish our season sometime the end of July. So we're about done after the end of this month. We might have a little bit more next month. Our distributorship grew from a very, very small distributorship. My mother and my father started our business in 1971. Like I said, they were brokers. They would buy product from different distributors here in Nogales, and then they would broker that product throughout the United States and Canada. And I think I grew up in the business, so I'm a produce baby. My goal was to go to college in Notre Dame and learn how to sell tomatoes. I never got to Notre Dame, but I sure did learn how to sell tomatoes. So our company has grown quite a bit over the last 50 years. We've been very blessed to have a tremendous support from our employees and from our base of farmers that we have in Mexico. We have farmers in Hermosillo area, in the Culiacan area, in the La Paz, Baja California area, and in the Jalisco area. When we first started off our business, we did a lot of our financing to our
It looks like we may have lost Jaime there for a moment. We'll see if he can log back in. But while we wait for Jaime to do that, let me jump to the questions. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top here, and I have a couple of questions early for Jennifer. So Jennifer, first question is, do the data for Tucson include the entire metropolitan area, or was the data you presented just for the city of Tucson?
The data I talked about today from the food security articles are for the Tucson metropolitan statistical area. That is the same geographic region as Pima County. So all of those geographies that you saw listed that we compare Tucson to, Phoenix, Portland, San Diego, those are all metropolitan areas, not city. We do have information available, not food security in particular, but we have things like SNAP benefits available at the community level, and you can find that in the library. If you go to the library, and the link is in the upper right hand corner just below the search bar. If you go there and then you look in the menu on the left and click on Southern Arizona Communities, there is an article in there that has some information like SNAP benefits at the city and town level in Southern Arizona.
Okay, great, thank you. Actually, another question for Jennifer. It's about the drop in household income. So is it a drop in household income that increases the food insecurity percentage during that kind of 2008-2009 period, the Great Recession?
Right, yeah, so there was a significant increase in unemployment, which would have decreased wages for many households, and that would then increase in food insecurity for those households.
Okay, great, thank you. Have a kind of question here that Michael may be able to add some information on. So it's a little bit of a long one. I'm going to read it now. It says the support provided by the Arizona National Guard for the Sahuarita and other community food banks throughout the state is being funded through approval to use a federal Title 32 training status. Can you please address, if possible, if there is an update on an extension for that Title 32 authority and funding from both the Department of Defense and FEMA in order to be able to continue that mission beyond the current end date? Is that anything you might be able to comment on?
And thank you, Rosanna, for that question and your support at the state level. I can say that the federal government has not yet reauthorized that. 41 governors have requested that, not only for the support of food banks, but for many other needs across the nation. So hopefully the federal government will reauthorize that. Right now, we're waiting for the feds to make up their mind, and the states, communities are saying, we need this. So let's hope that federal government supports local government.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Looks like we have Jaime back.
I apologize for that. Occasionally we have electrical insecurities down in Nogales.
Well, I'm so glad to have you back, Jaime.
And the internet.
Please continue.
Anyway, I apologize for that. When we first started our business 50 years ago, we used to finance some of our growers to farm specific products for us, anywhere between tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers. Over the course of the years, we've whittled down the amount of growers that we have, and we now represent 13 different growers. And with those 13 different growers, we import anywhere between 5 and 6 million boxes of fresh produce during our season. You know, a lot of people tell me, what exactly does a distributor do? And in very short words, and we feed North America, and we're very, very proud of what we do. This is a small community. Nogales has 22,000 people here, but the logistics that it takes to distribute all of our food, close to between $4 and $5 billion worth of fresh fruits and vegetables come through this port of entry every single year, along with another 25 to $28 billion worth of maquiladora products that cross through Nogales. So that's over $30 billion worth of international trade that come north and south here in Nogales, Arizona. So it's a very, very important logistics hub for food in general all over the United States, for the United States and Canada. We're very, very proud of what we do. It's been a long process. We're consistently having issues, whether they're state issues, and a lot of our issues have to do with federal issues and with trade issues. And that's a little scary for us, because we know that there's so many people that count on us for their food all across the United States and all across Canada. The food banks, we've had a tremendous partnership with food banks for many, many years. And we're very, very pleased to be within your network of the food banks. We need you just as much as you need us. There are times when there is an oversupply of product, and we need to give that to food banks. From one of the things that makes things different here in Southern Arizona than the rest of the country is a lot of food banks around the country buy their food. And what's typical here in Southern Arizona is that the food is donated, or a lot of it, at least a lot of it that comes from Nogales, is actually donated to the food bank. It's at a loss to the farmer and to the distributor like myself, but it is at least getting to where it needs to go. And at a time during COVID, like right now we're in this pandemic, it's absolutely imperative that we continue this partnership and that we actually grow in this partnership. We had our supervisor from Santa Cruz County, Mr. Bruce Bracker, and Pima County Supervisor Sharon Bronson. They were talking one day, and they were talking about the food inequities and the issues that the Northern Arizona tribes had right around April, in between April and May, and they had some serious food issues up in Northern California. And I told Supervisor Bracker that I would send out a challenge to all my distributor friends to donate $5,000 worth of food. At that time, the markets were sky high and really, really valuable to be sold. But we felt that, as you know, the Fresh Produce Association of the Americas, which is our association for distributors down here, we felt that it was our duty, and we felt that if we had the capacity to do that, then we would help the tribal nations up north. But we were able to send anywhere between 12, I believe it was 14 loads, full loads of product, almost 1 million pounds of food within over a 2-week period of time. We were very, very blessed to do that, and we continued to do that not only for the tribal nations, but for all our community food bank networks in Arizona and outside Arizona. We were sending food to Nevada, to New Mexico, to Texas, to California. And because of our food distribution network that we have down here, we were very, very blessed to do that. I have a hard time, accepting that we have so many food equities in Arizona, especially since we have this distribution hub. I can't imagine how other states are dealing with these same issues when they don't have the access to at least fresh produce the way we do here in Southern Arizona. It kills me to see that there's kids that go to school without eating sometimes. And right now with COVID, these food banks sometimes are the only source of food for some of these children since they're not going to school. A lot of our other nonprofits like the Boys and Girls Club, they've done great jobs here, and they continue to give out food every single day with the help of local distributors like ourselves and the food bank and also the school system as well. So I'm very proud of what we do down here, and I'm very proud of our relationship with the community food banks. We try to help as much as we can, whenever we can, how we can. But the food inequities around the United States are the same in Canada, and they're the same in Mexico. So when we say, or when I talk to people and I say we feed North America, whether we sell the product or whether we donate the product, we do feed North America. And that's part of a little bit of what we do down here in Nogales. I'd like to, that's pretty much it for me. I can answer any questions all of you all have. I don't have all the technical stuff and all the data like George and Michael have, and Susan and Jennifer, but I can give you a more realistic picture of what happened in the last 3 months or 4 months with COVID, and where I think that we're going in the future.
Oh, thanks, Jaime. That was fantastic, and actually that was kind of my question. Do you know what have the kind of the pandemic related issues around the border, have those had any impact on the bringing food in from Mexico? And do you think, when you look forward to the fall and next winter, do you foresee any impacts there if the pandemic is still not under control?
Well, it's interesting, when the restaurants first closed, when we went and had a stay in place order and restaurants closed, we had a tremendous amount of oversupply of product. People were going into stores and they were seeing their shelves that were empty, and that it was absolutely not the case, especially here in Nogales and anywhere else that you import food, and our farmers, domestic farmers around the United States and Canada, we had food available. The problem was that in the last 5 years, the food service distribution network has overtaken the retail sector as far as the total amount of percentage of food being bought in the United States and Canada. So when food service closed down, that meant no cruise lines, no restaurants, prison systems, hotels, nothing was available. And you have these large food service companies all around North America with a tremendous amount of inventory. They were unable to distribute where their typical food channels were, or distribution channels were, and they ended up being our own competitors. They were selling their products to retailers because that was the only way to get that product to the consumer as fast as possible without losing the majority of their inventory. And they ended up becoming our competitors. So what would happen was, for about 2 weeks between the time that the food service companies were selling their products that they had on inventory in their local area, whether it was Portland, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver, or even Phoenix, they were selling and distributing that food to their retail sectors that they're close by. And they were limiting our ability to sell our products that we were crossing every single day. So we had a tremendous amount of food that was disked under at our ranches in Mexico. The same thing happened to our domestic farmers here. They were disking products every single day, hundreds of thousands of acres of food that was ready to come up either imported from Mexico or from other areas around the world, and as well as our domestic products were being dissed under. And they just could not push all of that extra availability and the extra supply through the retail sector. They just were not ready to do it. They didn't have the manpower, and they could not actually display everything that was available. So it was a very, very tough month for us. Our farmers and our distributors, we lost a lot of money. But right around Easter, things started to change. About a week before Easter, things started to change. We started to get to figure out how much could be sent through our retail sector and through our wholesale sector. But food service never came back until just recently.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we lost Jaime again. Apologize for that. We will, I'm sure, get him back here in a moment. But with that, let me, we have a question here for Michael. So Michael, and I think this is probably on a lot of people's minds, how can our Pima Area Labor Federation look ahead to be a better partner and supporter of the community food bank?
Well, thank you for the question. Let's broaden it. How can we support one another economically and through all the social determinants of health, including food security, access to education, healthcare, quality childcare, improved transportation, affordable housing? Let's start with what we can do and start to advocate for improving wages in Southern Arizona. That's going to take political will. That's going to be a heavy lift. That's going to be a lot of private businesses and large organizations struggling with coming out of a pandemic. How do you get people reemployed? And then how do you keep improving wages? It is about making decisions about where wealth is distributed. So I know it's a long, heavy lift, but we could do that. Meanwhile, there's so many organizations, many on this phone today, who do such good work related to all those social disparities. Volunteer, be safe in that volunteering. Financial contributions, everyone's website is taking those, whether you're the Desert Museum, Interfaith Community Services. I'm gonna miss so many people. Colin Waite and the work he's doing at the U of A. There's so many people on this call today who can use capital. Nonprofits, the safety net, don't have access to capital as business does or as government. So access to financial capital, political capital is super important. And quite frankly, improving our social capital and getting to know each other better, trust each other more, and listen to each other and make space so others can take space. I would say we can each do that.
That's great. Thanks. Thank you, Michael. We have a lot of comments here, a lot of interesting links to information on the comments. If I could ask Tamara to be sure and save the chat at the end of our presentation, that might be interesting to share with the panelists for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So let me scroll down a little bit. So let's see. I think there's a question here about coordination, Michael. So is there a coordination between the county's community action centers and the food bank regularly?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
The question about coordination is a good one across the ecosystem of providers. It's often dependent on individual relationships between individuals within individual institutions. There has been, I know Pima County and others have done some tech-enabled network platform coordination so that you can connect affordable housing, rental assistance, utility assistance to shelters, to perhaps mental health providers. We really do need to build out the infrastructure, tech-enabled infrastructure for coordinating services across Arizona. We lack that infrastructure. It will take investment. It would be an interesting investment that the state could fund as part of an economic development, innovation, keeping the next generation of talent fully utilized in Arizona. So probably some exciting possibilities, but much to do there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. Do you have any final comments, Michael? Sorry, not to put you on the spot or anything.
Let's all stay strong and resilient through this pandemic. Let's stick together. Let's serve one another and one another's interests, not just our own. And I know that I have low moments. I have weepy moments. I know you do too. This is real, this public health crisis and this economic crisis. And we can get through this, but things must change. And they must change about who has access to what, whose voice is heard, who decides what. We can make that change in this democracy. We can make that change locally, and we can make it state and nationally, and it's time. So I applaud you all for being part of a great democracy that wants to care for one another. Let's continue that effort.
Okay, great. Thanks much, Michael. Jennifer?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention there's so many wonderful organizations on this call today. And as part of what we do at the MAP dashboard is we highlight how organizations use the MAP dashboard. And if you use the MAP dashboard within your organization to look at data, to plan, we would like you to reach out to us so that we can feature you on the MAP dashboard, talk about how you use the MAP, what your organization does for our community. So there's that. Also, thanks Michael and Hame for wonderful presentations today. And I hope everyone on the call stays healthy during this time.
Great, thanks Jennifer. I'll just check one last time. Is Jaime back on the call? I don't hear him. Well, thank you so much for attending today's event. The recording will be up on the MAP dashboard as soon as we can, and maybe other areas as well. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you. If there's research that we can do as part of the MAP dashboard, please reach out to us. Let us know the topics that you're most interested in learning more about, and we'll do what we can to help out with that. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you to our presenters, Jennifer Perlin, Michael McDonald, Jaime Chamberlain. We apologize for the technical difficulties. But we hope you all stay safe, and we hope we see you again soon. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.